Good evening, I'm Enari Darklord and welcome to Churikua. Tonight, in our second season compilation, you will listen to the legends of the Burn Lady Street, the Philibert Aspairt Ghost, the Frăsinei monastery, and Lobisomem. And remember that the night awaits for you.
Many people greet me with cordiality. Many others try to disguise. However, I know that it is hard for them to see me, not to mention how dure it is to see me arrive with a black veil over my face. Many must think that I have gone crazy. Many others admire my bravery and many others reserve their opinion. I arrived from Villa de Illescas. My father, under the promise of being an encomendero, agreed to travel to the New World, to change our life and leave all our previous life behind. As you may well have wondered, when we arrived, he was faced with the arduous task of teaching the Indians the Word of God and to fulfill their task and the work they were ordered to do. For me, it was interesting to see how those people were so different from us. But even so, the desire to work, to get ahead was the same. Little by little, my father's fortune grew, and so did the time he left me at home. When my mother passed away some time ago, she made me take care of the housework. My father became a businessman and mine owner, which meant that he had to leave the house constantly. I was ready somehow used to this life. However, at the beginning it was a bit difficult, considering that we did not know anyone at the beginning, but little by little I got used to my new life and my new residence. I found fascinating to see and help those in need, to help them, something that filled my heart with joy. There were many who suffered from the plague and did not have the money to afford treatment with a doctor. My father not only authorized me, on the contrary, he gave me his approval to help all those who needed, something that made many not only showed me their admiration. They described me as an angel whose beauty and good heart went hand in hand. Throughout time, many handsome young men approached me to talk, introduce themselves, bring me some presents. However, none managed to capture my heart until Martin de Escupoli, the Marquis of Piedmont, arrived. When I met him, I could not help but fall under his charms. He was attractive, romantic, and was a person of details. He filled me with love letters, poetry, which filled my heart with joy. As soon as I had the chance, I looked for a chest, and there I kept each of his letters. As time went by, our love grew, and with our love, something strange in him. His distrust for anyone who turned to see me or wanted to approach me and who was not in a needy person, he burned with anger. As time went by, it did not take long for those handsome gentlemen and young men who tried to pretend to be after me to appear dead. I would dedicate my prayers to them for their eternal rest and for them to find the culprit. How cruel destiny can be sometimes. It turns out that my beloved was the culprit, since no gentleman could approach me or enjoy my beauty, as he said, except for my father, a man of God, or himself. No one else could come near me. I even knew that even servants who were not natives from these lands were a threat. Darling, don't you see? Your beauty attracts them. I am suspicious of all of them, and that they take you away from me, but not from you. I know that our hearts are destined to be part of this great love that is being woven. Please don't follow on these footsteps. I have eyes for no one else but you. My heart is yours, no one else. That's why I won't be calm until those who want to take you away from me stay away. I have challenged them to duels and even taken their lives. All of your love, and to keep them away and prevent them from claiming your hand and therefore your heart. Hearing this made my blood run cold. I couldn't believe my ears. I begged him to stop, but apparently he didn't listen. The next morning, someone else died, and couldn't stop thinking about his words and knowing that I was to blame for them dying because of me. The first thing I did after going to church and inspired to sacrifice myself for others like our Lord Jesus Christ was, in fact, to do the same. I went to the kitchen and took firewood and burning coals and put in on my face to put an end to what so many tragedies brought to this environment. My beauty, my face. If Martin would stop taking their lives, that would be the best sacrifice. When I woke up, the doctor was attending me. My father had not yet returned from his business trip, and Martin was already there. Leaving us alone, I told him, Darling, you should no longer distrust them. There is no longer any reason for you to distrust them and have to take their lives. Martin burst into tears and said that it is the greatest act of love, that he was moved by what I have just done, and that he did not expect more than to marry me. As soon as my father arrived, he did what was necessary to ask for my hand and to do what was mandatory. When I recovered from the incident, it was painful to see myself in the mirror. However, with time, I got used to wearing veils so as not to scare strangers and friends with my face. We got married in La Profesa, and since then I have been happy, dedicating my life to helping those in need, despite those who whisper about and admire me for my bravery. Now that you know my story, what do you think? What would you be capable of doing for love? Sometimes you don't realize how lucky you are, even to enjoy just those mundane pleasures like a day off, a coffee, or even something a little more substantial for the spirit. I will tell you my story, the one that brings me to the Belgrave church to pray and light a candle for a man's soul that resonates everywhere. And just as history can be cruel at times to those who lack historical relevance and come from such an austere birth that there is a barely enough record of their existence. In my case, this happened just a couple of nights ago. I went out drinking with some friends, and for some reason, we ended up on the banks of the Seine talking about this and that. In the end, we ended up walking so much and wanting to live an adventure that we came up with the idea of going to the catacombs. One of my friends was a guide, but since he was so drunk, we decided to let him sleep at the entrance, take his keys, and go on an adventure. It turns out that group, not counting our friend the guide, was of 4 people, but in the end only 2 of us went in. The other one of our friends, surely afraid and wanting to dissimulate, preferred to stay to witness and alert us in case someone else came and saw us. We walked part of the way together. However, at one point we decided to separate and go our separate ways. With some care, I was watching where I was going, but at one point I ended up getting disoriented and without realizing where I was going and where I was going. I sat down to rest a little and I guess I fell asleep. When I woke up, I saw a light and I thought at first it was our friend, the guide, or some other of my friends, but no. The one who was coming in was no one else we know. The one who was entering was nothing more and nothing less than a man about 60 years old, dressed in burial clothes, ancient clothes, perhaps from the time of the revolution. He looked at me scared and did not hesitate to greet me and speak to me. "Good man, may I ask you what are you doing here?" "I'm lost, and to tell you the truth, I'm beginning to fear for my life." "Are you?" We seem to be in the same situation. "May I ask you your name?" "That's right, my name is Pierre. And yours?" "Philibert Aspairt, at your service." "May I ask you how you got here?" I began to tell him in broad strokes how a night of drinking led us to an improbable challenge to come and dare us to enter the catacombs. My surprise was that Philibert was extremely upset that the authorities did not catch us, as the price paid for such an act could be terrible. So we decided to walk and look for a way out, and as we walked together looking for at least where I entered, he told me his story. I was work. I had many siblings, however. We survived, barely 5 of us. I barely learned to read and write only what was necessary to understand lists of materials, names, and short phrases. I started as an apprentice stonemason since I was a child, about 8 or 9 years old. It was all work and dedication, not to mention doing what was necessary to survive the revolution, which brought great changes and difficulties until I met my wife, Elizabeth, with whom we had served wonderful children. However, life takes care of bringing joys, misfortunes, and making you slower and less agile with age. That happened to me. As the years went by, I could no longer work stonemason. You had to earn a living somehow, and for Elizabeth and I, who now live alone despite visits of our children and grandchildren, I had to look for alternatives. I started working as a janitor in different businesses until one day I managed to become the janitor and the person in charge. I started working as a porter in different businesses until one day I managed to become the porter at the Baldgrass Hospital. I do my job as well as I can. However, I heard noises in the backyard. I decided to go in and check that everything was in order. I opened a door that was closed and noticed that it was the entrance to this place. I thought I heard screams as if someone was looking for help. I got desperate like you. I sat down for a while after getting tired, and I don't know, it seemed like hours or even days had passed. When I woke up and turned on my lantern, I walked a little and I found you, something that represents a great relief for me. Together we walked somehow. It was comforting to know that someone else was coming with me and that I was not alone. After all, the initial fear, some company, although somewhat strange, was welcome, and more if it is with company. We could go out. Little by little, I began to remember a path I had been on, and a few meters ahead, my friend the guide came running with a flashlight. After a bating breath, he said how much he had been worried about me, since it was a couple of hours before dawn, and when he saw that I was not coming out, he decided to come looking for me. I smiled at him and immediately told him I was not coming alone. However, when I turned around and called Philibert, he was not there. It was as if he had vanished out nowhere. I called him, but there was no answer. Once outside, and after meeting with the others, I knew that I was the last to leave. My other friend, Claude, who came in with me at the beginning, according to what he said shortly after we parted, was so terrified that he decided to return. And when they saw that I did not come out, they had no choice but to wake up the guide and tell him what happened. He was immediately upset and looked for a flashlight to go inside and look for me. As I found out later that day while dealing with the hangover, that nice man I was in the tunnel with was a man who had found the end of his life in the catacombs without being able to get out. Somehow, it gave me something to think about, that this poor man passed away there without finding his way out, something I feel fortunate about, although if I look at it closely, it is as if he had helped me to get out, and so he too could finally get out of there, or at least that's what I like to believe. I felt it as a great detail or as a way to thank that good man for coming here to Valdegrass to pray for his soul and to thank him for not leaving me alone and to give me a chance that he never had anymore, to be able to see the light of the day again. Do you think is it good that prohibitions exist? Sometimes an event gives rise to them, and this monastery is no exception. My family is from Madagascar, but for reasons that you will soon know about, not to mention work reasons. I now live in Ramnigu-Valcha. In the commune, my father made a living driving with a truck that was a cargo truck that carried everything from materials, groceries, etc., that knew the roads in and out of the commune. His great driving skills made him reliable in his job. However, trading never fails to knock on our door. One day, my sister Alina was riding with him. She was the oldest. She was about 16 years old, and I was only about 7 or 8. It was common for Alina to ride with Dad in the truck occasionally, especially when Dad brought too much merchandise and had no other duties at home. She would help Dad with the list of merchandise to be delivered to different suppliers and also what we were to receive for them. Likewise, if there was merchandise to be purchased, an order was placed and they would bring it. Most of the farmers in town and those who produced some handicrafts depended on my father and two other trucks that were in town. Much of the income at the time depended on their work, and not to mention the fact that we were able to find some products that could not be produced here. With the help of the trucks, we were able to acquire some fabrics and sewing products. Although it is a small place, thanks to my father's work and Alina's help, it was different from the other two trucks that we had at the time in town. Since Alina was very good at organizing and even quick calculations, an outstanding skill that at the time, despite the ideas that she should only study things for women if that was her path, or to go looking for a husband. Our parents agreed that Alina finish her duties and that brought in large orders so she could help him on his truck. And our parents hoped that once she won the admiration of everyone, it would not be long before she would find a good husband and start a family of her own, and perhaps find a good man to help that on the truck as well. The day came, and it was the day that marked our lives. My father went out as usual to deliver goods. Alina went with him, as there was a lot of merchandise to carry. However, they did then count on the fact that when they returned with empty truck, the weather was going to be bad, and for some unknown reason, the the fog became so thick that they did not see the detour and went uphill towards the monastery instead of going home. The truck overturned and that managed to get out, and the truck fell in the direction of a ravine. When he realized Alina was lying dead, he realized that when he got out of the truck, Alina fell on the grass and hit her head on a rock. That wasn't harm, just a few bumps as he got out, so he took Alina in his arms and carried her. He sought help at church, where the father was still. The news was grim. Alina had died from the blow to the head from the rock. The doctor ruled upon the arrival at church. Father was devastated, and in his grief and tears he was lamenting what had happened. As the doctor arrived, the father asked about what had happened and only designed and only deigned to comfort that once the heartbreaking news was known, with pain and regret, father said that surely the mistake of going uphill on the hill with Alina was what cost him her life, as the curse of the monastery was what claimed her life. That was blaming himself for what happened, that never fully recovered from this event. Only on the Alina's death anniversary, he stays at home or in church on his knees all day praying, asking forgiveness for his mistake. When I had the opportunity to leave the commune, I took it. Since going to church, whose holy image ends the lives of women just by approaching or taking a road to the monastery, even just by mistake, ends their lives taking a part of ours in the process. For years, every time I went to Mass, I read that inscription in the monastery, and that causes me much repulsion. I read it so many times that it even resides in my memory, and I can recite it word for word. This holy place was built from Telemuli to be a monk's monastery, and because the women could bring a scandal to the monks living there, therefore under heavy constraint, it was stopped from this place to trespass on, under any circumstances, to the women. And those who will dare to continue shall be under a curse, and all misfortunes shall come upon them, such as poverty, lust, and all kinds of punishments. And again, to those who will keep this decree, may the blessing of God and our humility come upon them. Kalinic, Bishop of Ramnikului No Louis Severin, January 17, 1867. I was not reassured, and when I asked one of the elders of town, they told me that a long time ago there was a shepherdess who accidentally crossed this boundary. She had convulsions, and they could not find the reason of her illness until she was able to admit that she accidentally crossed the boundary looking for a sheep that needed to be brought back. Upon hearing this, her parents sent for Saint Callinicus, who, upon hearing the young girl, and although reluctant and angry for having crossed, upon listening to her, understood that she did not do it in a bad faith or with intention. So, under the promise that this would not happen again, he prayed, and soon she was cured. There is no doubt that this is what made me the person I am now. The confirmation to my fears, and to realize that the warnings we are given are real. If you were here, would you dare to go beyond the restriction? What would you do if one day your life changed so much that you now found yourself in the position of distancing so much from others so as not to hurt them? This is something that eats me up inside, and I can't do much about it. As you can imagine, I had to distance myself for the sake of my beloved ones. I used to live a normal life with day-to-day worries. However, one night, my life changed completely. I was going through some financial hardship, and I decided to take over time at my job as soon as the chance presented itself. I left late at night. On my way home, I had a flat tire and I had to stop in the middle of the road to change it. So close at hand, the place where the flat was part of connected to the brush. Although there were safer roads, for me it was the shorter one. While I was changing the tire, I heard noises and I felt like an animal was there, watching me. I hurried to change it, and just as I removed the hydraulic jack, a huge creature came at me. It pushed me with such force that I felt myself shot a couple of meters into the underground. I stood still and tried to look calm to prevent it from hurting me, but I didn't succeed. That wolf-like creature bit my leg. Suddenly, a trailer passed by my car, opened the window, and sounded the horn. Whereupon the creature took off in a panic and ran into the brush in a matter of seconds. I took advantage of the fact that the window was open and asked for help. The driver got out in a hurry and went to where I was, helped me stand up and noticed the bite I had on my leg caused by the animal. He offered me a pair of gauze to clean the blood and cover the wound until I could get to a hospital for treatment. He recommended me to do so because of the nature of my wound, and that I thanked him for his help, and we went our respective ways. The next day I felt sick. I had fever, chills, and did not go to work. The discomfort was such that I went to the hospital. They gave me just treatment for the infection or possible infection due to the wound, and I returned home. When the night came, I felt terrible, more and more, with a lot of pain. I only remember fainting, and I did not know more about me until the next morning. I woke up with great pain all over my body. My bones ached. I only remember that my clothes were torn. There were scratches and broken objects all over the house, but surprisingly, I felt better. I didn't understand what had happened to me. I assumed that taking advantage of my convalescence and how bad I felt, I didn't understand what had happened to me. I assumed that taking advantage of my convalescence and how bad I felt, maybe some burglars had broken in or an animal got in. However, I checked everything and everything that has certain value, and everything was in its respective place. I followed the doctor's instructions and stayed home to rest, knowing that I had to go back to work next day. After a few days, everything had passed. My life was going normally, but sometime later, one night at home, I was very dizzy, and as soon as night fell, I fainted again. On that occasion, I dreamt that I was an animal that was attacking other animals to feed on them, scaring away the full moon, while I felt thirsty for the flesh of other animals, but above all, for blood. The next morning, I was in the courtyard of my house, with torn clothes and blood stains in my mouth. I felt that I was giving off an animal stench. I didn't understand what was happening to me, so I just hurried to work. I didn't understand what was happening to me, and my girlfriend Amanda offered to stay the night with me, not knowing that the unhappiness that had befallen me would come to light at night. At dusk, I started to get dizzy, and at one point, I just fainted. I immediately dreamed as if I were an animal, a wolf. I dreamed I saw Amanda running, screaming, and somehow I woke up for a few moments, and there she was, Amanda, with a gun on her back, as if she had been scratched by a huge beast. However, I didn't count on seeing my reflection in the room. It was of a wolf, or so it seemed. A huge wolf with grayish fur standing on two legs, and as I moved, I understood it was me. I was that creature. I saw Amanda's blood on my hands. I ran in the direction of the courtyard, and from there, once I got there, and I don't remember anything else. Amanda did not want to hear from me. She feared me. But I begged her for days until she agreed to see me. To my surprise, she accepted my apology and told me that I was a Lobisomem, a werewolf that after having been bitten by another one carried with a curse, which made that every full moon, especially on Tuesdays and or Fridays, I was turned into a bloodthirsty beast that would do anything to satiate it. He told me that there were also some who became the seventh child of the family, and even if they had committed certain sins as punishment, there was a solution which I was to try in my next transformation. Amanda was reluctant and scared. It was normal. After all, I didn't even know what was wrong with me, and after asking her so much, she agreed to help me. Since then, I have tried not to leave work late on those days, to stay away from anyone who could get hurt by me. She said she had the solution, and I am a few days away from achieving it. To leave this curse behind. If you were in my shoes, would you be able to do anything to get back to whom you once were? Or would you be able to take it and adapt yourself to live your life and deal with this curse?